Welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. Today's podcast is going to be fun because it tackles two topics that we're pretty passionate about here at the Unstoppable Freedom Alliance: fitness and firearms. And I've said it many times that our government, or at least some of those in our government, are actively working to make sure that we're fat, medicated, dependent, unhealthy, and unarmed. But there are many organizations working to fix all that. And our guest today is Nick Thayer. He's the owner of the Tactical Games, and he's the host of their podcast by the same name. Let me tell you a little bit about Nick. Nick's a veteran of the United States Coast Guard. And here's a quick fact on that. The United States Coast Guard is one of our nation's 5 military services, but it's one of the oldest organizations in the federal government. You know, the Coast Guard operates on America's maritime front lines, and it's done so, listen to this, since Alexander Hamilton petitioned President George Washington to build a fleet of 10 seagoing cutters all the way back in 1790. Well, Nick then worked, not since 1790, but he then worked a 10-year post-active duty career in the defense industry, and he joined the Tactical Games as a competitor in early 2020 and quickly found a home in that sport and in the community. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. That summarized the last 18 years of my life pretty well.
Well, listen, I didn't want to indicate that you were as old as our founding fathers, but, you know, you'd be in good company at least.
I'm getting there. I feel it more and more every day.
That's right. Yeah. Well, the Coast Guard is pretty tough, right? I mean, tell us a little bit about your experience there. It's kind of known as one of the most grueling components of our defense. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so I actually, when I went to the recruiter, I signed up, or I was going to the recruiters to meet with the Marines. And I met a Marine Corps recruiter and had a good conversation, but he was very adamant about me joining the Marines. And then just on a whim, I went and met with a Coast Guard recruiter, and the Coast Guard recruiter's statement, not quite verbatim, paraphrasing a little bit, was, if you want to join the Coast Guard, we'd love to have you. If you have any doubts in your mind, we don't want you in our service.
Wow.
And I knew that was the place that I wanted to be. I knew that being the part of an organization that wants its members to be there, encourages its members, looks for growth. I had an excellent career. It was non-typical. A lot of guys that are in the United States Coast Guard serve law enforcement missions. My recruiter offered me a bonus to go into the electronics technician field.
Ooh.
At the time, I was 19 and had maybe about $10 in my checking account, and they offered me a couple $1,000 to do this thing that they said was really cool, and I got to work on secret squirrel stuff, and I took it and had no idea what I was going to be doing, and everybody made fun of me while I was going through boot camp and kind of through that path, and because I'm 6'2", I'm 200 pounds, I'm athletic, I like to work out, and I was working, like, when I showed up to A school, these guys were playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like that was the kind of nerds that I was with.
It's hilarious.
But I found a home there. I loved it. And throughout my career, did some really interesting, cool stuff. I got to work at the Coast Guard Academy in the physics department.
Wow.
After that, I transitioned down to Miami, and I was taking reception of our newest fleet of cutters, which are fast response cutters. Drug interdiction is their primary, migrant and drug interdiction is their primary job. So I was taking reception of those, and through that met some guys in the defense industry and got recruited to go and do what I was doing on the active duty side, on the civilian side, which was a good step for me and resulted in me being able to do a lot more different fun projects.
Yeah, that's cool. So what you just said was, I'm going to translate this for our audience. You're really super smart. And all of a sudden, I feel a little bit out of my league on that side. You talked about physics, you talked about electronics, you talked about these defense systems. Holy smokes! And we're thankful for guys like you. But it is a little interesting, right? Because of your physicality, that you would have an opportunity to be on that side of the defense lines.
Yeah, it was. So when I ended up down in Miami, I ended up with a group of dudes that were like me. It was really strange. It was like all the other guys that were in the electronics or IT field were all just love to work out. So we used to put on baseball tournaments, softball tournaments, and we would kick the crap out of all the guys that are like the law enforcement guys. We had more time to practice. Yeah. We were never out to port. So we would just go and we would just smoke these guys. That's so fantastic. If anybody was at Miami Beach from in 2013, they probably got beat by us nerds.
You should apologize at this point. Yeah, just tell them they're probably still licking their wounds from that. Great. Well, listen, I'm super thankful for you. I know that everything to do with migration, illegal immigration, all of our borders, all of our coastline protection right now is really super stressed. I mean, it's a super stressful environment. We can have maybe difference of opinion on this, but I believe this is an intentional invasion of our country. I think it's a willful invitation of people from not just our neighbors, but from 160 countries around the world. So now we're dealing with a whole different population of people. And what I'm seeing is a lot of men. So I know there's a lot of stress. I've had Border Patrol agents, former agents on the show. I've had former military on the show to talk about this. Do you feel like that community is under a lot of pressure right now?
Yeah, I do. I live in Texas
Yeah.
now, so we experience it probably as much as anybody in the nation, right? That we're seeing it, the front lines of it. I have personal friends that are in law enforcement, that are in federal law enforcement, that are Border Patrol agents, that are BORTAC.
Yeah.
And those guys they're overworked. They're getting the crap kicked out of them right now. I'm sure people remember when they repealed the Dry Foot Act. District 7, when I was in the Coast Guard at that time, was going through something similar with all the Cubans coming into America. That there was like an influx right before it was finally finished. So it's not something new. I think this level is new, like we've never experienced before, but they're definitely the guys that are on the front lines are not the ones that are making the decisions about what's happening, right? Those are the guys that are doing the best with what they can and what they're given by their administration. And they want to protect and serve, and they're just not necessarily always given the means to be able to do that.
Yeah. It's amazing. I always say that politicians aren't paid to solve problems. In fact, in many ways, they're paid to make these problems persist or even grow, because now, hey, I can come in and save you, which they never do. And we should, never depend on our government to save us, of course. But it's interesting. I think one of the things that's different now, I'm in Colorado. One of the things that I've seen that's different, and then we're going to get into the tactical games, because that's really why I have you on here. But this is just fun. This is fun for me to get your perspective. We have over 45,000 illegal immigrants transported into the city of Denver, which it would essentially fill the Denver Broncos stadium. It's insane. We obviously don't have the capability of handling that. It's overwhelming our system here. And I think that's one of the things that is most concerning as a citizen of this country, is that number one, we've got our own problems. We've got millions of homeless people already that we can't handle, who are American citizens. And now we're importing in millions more, who most of those end up poor, homeless, in need of services. Now they're being bussed and flown all around the country. And I think it's creating this inland problem in major cities all over the country. Are you seeing that same thing?
Sure. Yeah. And it's funny, the number 45,000, that's larger than the entire service for the United States Coast Guard.
Oh my gosh.
So if you were to factor in all the maritime law enforcement in the country of America, the migrant population in Denver is larger than
That's
that.
Unbelievable to me.
Yeah. And so I think the unique thing about this is we see it as like a uniquely American problem. Migration is a problem all over the world. Every country that I've been to, when you meet people, their biggest gripe are migrants coming from poor countries that are coming into their country that are straining their resources. That's not unique to America. It's something that's happening, and I don't think anybody's kind of figured out a way to deal with it yet. The biggest thing that we need to protect ourselves against are the bad actors that come in with the people that are genuinely looking for a better life.
That's right.
And it's impossible to decide between the two. How do you discern, that when I was in the Coast Guard, and I don't know if things have changed since then, but we weren't able to collect biometric data from people from Cuba, for example.
Wow.
So you don't have any real criminal record of who these people are, or any real information about who these people are. So they come in with fake identification or whatever it might be. Like, that's the real problem that I think we're dealing with. And I think we have not seen the fruits of that yet. And I think people have been warning us about that, whether it's the FBI or whoever it is, DHS, for a long time. So unfortunately, I think we're going to have to deal with it in a very real situation before, any politician acts on it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, it's good. It's really insightful for you to say that, because this is a migration problem around the world. And I know there's going to be a day of reckoning where something is going to have to happen, and we're going to have to deal with it. But let's get on to something more fun. Let's talk about the tactical games, right? Let's go. I always want to pick when I bring on former military and guys that care about our border and care about our country, I always love to get into that a little bit. So thank you for that. Well, listen, as a Spartan racer, I'm a Spartan racer. I follow a bunch of Spartan athletes on social media, and all of a sudden, some of their posts started highlighting their competition in the tactical games. That's how I found out about you guys. I didn't even know this existed. This was maybe a year ago. I started seeing these posts from some really high-level Spartan athletes, some CrossFitters. That's what really turned me on to the whole concept of fitness and firearms, and especially as a sport, right, that this is competitive. Tell us a little bit about the tactical games, how you got involved, and why this is such a big deal right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's fitness and firearms.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to summarize what we do. We test competitors in a wide array of fitness modalities. So, it's interesting you brought up Spartan. We've had a ton of very high level Spartan racers and people that just do it as a hobby come into the sport. And there's an aspect of it that they excel at.
Yeah.
But then you put in maybe something that's strength biased, and somebody who's used to an endurance race isn't necessarily going to be as good at the strength bias. So on the fitness side, it offers a wide array of tests. On the shooting side, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So we use assault rifles or modern day sporting rifles, and we use pistols as our means of engagement, our primary and secondary weapons. Our competitors will go out there, they'll do some means of fitness, and then while under duress from that physical duress, they'll then engage targets. And we do a lot of bullseye shooting, we do action shooting, we do long range with an AR, which is really considered mid range. We do all of that. So what we're looking to do is test competitors' ability across a wide range of fitness and shooting modalities.
Wow. Okay, so I'm super excited about this because I was able to get registered for the regional event in Utah. So, thanks for your help on that. Yeah, super pumped. I got on the waiting list. I was so disappointed. I was pressuring my sons, two of my sons, to compete with me, and they've got full-time jobs. They got a lot going on, so it was a bit of a challenge. But in that time where I was trying to pressure them to compete with me, I lost access, and then I had to get on the waiting list. So super grateful that opened up some slots. Yeah, really excited about Utah coming up.
Yeah, Utah, we have always had great matches in Utah. The state and the proximity to other states like Arizona has a great shooting community.
Wow.
Wyoming, Oregon, that whole area, even California, there are a ton of people that love shooting sports in California. They just don't have the means to be able to do it. Colorado's another one.
Yeah.
If it weren't for the magazine ban, we'd be putting matches on in Colorado every year too.
I know it.
There's that match is going to be incredible. So originally we opened up 180 slots, which is typical for our competition. We sold that out about 6 months before the event happened.
Amazing.
So many people requested waitlist access like you did. We opened another 100 slots and we sold them out in just about 22 hours.
That's ridiculous.
So we'll have about 300 competitors at that match, including teams and everybody like
Amazing.
that. So I'm really excited to get out there and see everybody just kind of get after it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it seems like a really cool community. I'm really excited to be part of it and to, because it's edgy, and I think there's a lot of us out here that want something that's going to really push our boundaries. I mean, at 57, I'm constantly looking for the next thing to get me outside of my comfort zone and also to have some practical effectiveness to real life. And I think I want to ask you about that in a minute. But before that, I really want to ask you about the different components of this, the tactical games, in particular, fitness, firearms. And then I want to talk a little bit about the training that you guys offer, both in person and online. So let's talk about, before we do that, I alluded to the fact that some of these competitors are just top flight in what they do, right? Tell me about the breadth of the competitors. We know we've got some endurance athletes. We know we've got some CrossFitters. Who else is competing in the games?
About 50% of our competitor base is military and law enforcement. If you include the veteran population, that comes up to about 70%.
Wow.
They are people that are interested in not just what they used to be or what their rank or their unit identifies them as, but instead what their capabilities are.
Right.
People that like to be tested and figure out how fast, how far, how tough they can do until the wheels fall off. And when they figure out what that point is, they go back to the drawing board and they work on it and they make sure it's not a failure point next time.
Yes.
That's on the shooting side. On the fitness side, I can't tell you how many people I've seen.
Hold on. I gotta jump in here on this. I'm starting to get like the sweaty palms all of a sudden. All right. So I'll be honest. 50 to 70% being former law enforcement, military, etc. I just realized how I have to up my game on the shooting sport side of this. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Here's something I'm going to tell you, and this is going to break a lot of people's hearts,
Yeah.
but it's truth. A lot of the best shooters that we have in our competition come from the civilian side.
Okay.
When it comes to the style of marksmanship that we do, now this isn't a stress shoot where you're responding to a real life situation where
Right.
somebody's in danger, and you've built that. You've kind of built that background of being able to do that or having that under your belt. This is competition shooting.
Yeah.
So there is a difference between the two. And by no means do I think that the top competitor in our sport would go out there and be super fit for Delta or super fit for any of the special operations community units. But could he outshoot them?
Yeah.
Probably, if you put him in an action shooting match, or if you put him in a match like ours. Like, that's definitely the case.
Okay, that's encouraging. Yeah. Thank you.
And 50 plus, the division are you competing in 50 plus?
Yes.
Very great division. A bunch of dudes that are really excited to be out there and encouraging of one another. And much like our entire community, it's that is the best part of the sport. Like, we put on a cool event and it's fun to get out there and do cool stuff.
Yeah.
The people that participate in it make it what it is.
Yeah. That's cool.
There is a lot of people that could potentially have egos because of who they are, because of what they've done. Getting punched in the mouth by a workout changes that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think we joke often about, like, that guy's never been punched in the mouth. Go out there and realize how bad you suck against a 12-year-old girl, and then you'll know really quick.
It's so true. Oh my gosh, you get humbled very fast. And listen, the older I get, the more easy it is for me to be humbled. So I'm all right with that. Let's talk a little bit about the fitness competitors, the ones that are a little bit, maybe, are there former athletes that are competing?
A ton. Yeah, we actually pull more people from the fitness industry when it comes to our competitors than we do from the shooting industry.
Wow.
In large, and I'm using competitive shooting as kind of the guidelines. About 15% of our competitors come from a competitive shooting background, meaning they shoot USPSA, they shoot PRS, they shoot two guns, some kind of action shooting sport. The rest of them come with a fitness background and an interest in fitness, and then they adapt to the shooting side of the house.
Interesting.
The people that come from a fitness background are more willing to put themselves out there and suck at something.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. They are okay being bad at something because they're good at an element of it. They're good at the fitness side of it, and they're willing to work towards the shooting side of it because it builds proficiency, it builds a real life skill, it builds something that is good for them to have that they believe in.
That's amazing. And I think it speaks to a growth mindset, right? I mean, we talk a lot about that on the leadership side. So, I also have an opportunity to work with organizations, leadership teams, sports teams, coaches, you name it. And we do immersive experiences where we'll bring them in for 48 to 72 hours. My partners are former Navy SEALs. We'll break them down and we'll build them back up, help them create a new culture, a new standard. But part of that is the idea of having a growth mindset, right? It's this idea that, hey, it's okay to fail. Failure is it's not an identity. It's just an event. And so if I fail on it, good. Now I know, and I have opportunities to get better. Now I know where I am. It's like you were saying earlier, people want to be tested. They want to know what they're capable of. And I think that willingness to fail and that willingness to say, that's where I am right now, but I can get better, is probably a big part of this community, I would bet.
Yeah, it's arguably the largest part of this community.
That's cool.
And I think a lot of fitness communities are like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into a gym atmosphere, I was involved in CrossFit as a coach for a long time. It was similar. And the people that I met through that 7 years that I did that, I'm still friends with. I still keep in contact with. And they were like-minded people that wanted to go out and do something hard. And there's something about people that are willing to do something hard that, those are the kind of people that I want to be around.
Yeah. Well, that is exactly what got me into the sport. That's exactly why I'm doing it. In fact, my life is I will register for something that I'm not ready for right now that forces me to get ready fast. And right now, thankfully, I have June, July, August. I've got 3 months. Is that enough?
That's enough. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. Good to know. Well,
I did something a couple years ago. It was at our national championship when I was working for the sport, but wasn't owner of the sport yet.
Yeah.
I was working as the president of the sport. It was my last time competing in the national championship.
Wow.
A friend of ours, she came to our national championship, and she asked me if I wanted to participate. My fiance and I participate in a 50-mile ruck that was in Oahu 2 weeks later. At that time, the longest I had ever run was that day, and it was 10 miles. And I was like, sure, let's do it.
Let's do
so
it.
we flew out. We flew out to Oahu. My fiance and I both got sick on the flight out there. Like I got some kind of flu or something like that. Got out there, got the crap kicked out of me the next day. We woke up at like 4 a.m. to start this ruck, and it was. I got through about 25 miles of it, and at that point in time, my blisters were so bad, and it was so bad I had to quit, which I wasn't proud of, but it showed me something that at least I went out there and did it, and I ended up going back and trying it again and failing the second time without preparation. But one of these days, I'm going to get.
This seems to be a pattern. I'm not. This is a pattern now, Nick. Come on. Well, it's awesome though, but that's the competitive spirit, right? You're testing yourself, and what I love about it is, first of all, if you don't know what a ruck competition or a ruck walk is, it's brutal because you've got a rucksack on your body, and I'm guessing you had anywhere from 35 to 55 or more pounds, right, in the rucksack, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I had around 26 pounds, which was even light for that.
Yeah.
The guys that we were with, though, they all came from your area. They were all, I won't say all of them, most of them came from 10th group, and they could move. And we were moving at like a ridiculous pace and stopping every 10 miles for about like 7 minutes, like enough to change your socks or go to the bathroom, one of those two things. So I couldn't keep up. I will say those guys kicked the crap out of me.
That's brutal. And 50 miles, I mean, listen, if you just went out today and said, hey, I'm going to walk 50 miles, very few people are going to make that. Throw some weight on it, throw some incline, some changes in elevation, and next thing you know, you've got a recipe for blisters and a bow out, you know? Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to be doing some rucking to prepare for this for sure. Because it's such a key component. And of course, we'll be geared up, right? We'll have all we'll have the kit on, we'll have a bunch of gear, we'll have firearms on us. So I'm preparing as though I'm going to be carrying heavy loads most of the time.
Yeah. I would definitely prepare yourself physically to move through a run course around 3 to 5 miles with, I mean, if you figure all your kit, probably around 30 pounds, 35 pounds, depending on how heavy your rifle is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I'm pretty excited about it. Hey, tell us a little bit about, now that we know kind of who the competitors are, kind of what their mindsets are, tell us, because what I'm hoping, by the way, my goal with this is I'm hoping to turn people onto this in a big way. I've got a lot of friends, a lot of listeners, a lot of men and women, and I want to talk about that in a second, who are looking to be their best, and have probably in some level or another grown complacent about certain things. This is kind of a jolt for that, right? It kind of gets you back in the competitive game. A lot of my friends were elite athletes. They were all Americans in different sports. So they're all ready for that next challenge. And some of them are they're nervous about it, but they're excited about the opportunity to test what they're capable of. Let's talk a little bit. Hey, well, thanks for joining us for part one of a two-part series with Nick Thayer, the owner of the Tactical Games. Hey, make sure to tune in next time for part two, where we're going to talk about the training, and we're going to inspire you to become part of this growing community.